The Little Mermaid, Part 3. The little mermaid had never been this way before. This road to the sea witch, neither flowers nor grass grew there. Nothing but bare grey sandy ground stretched out to the whirlpool, where the water, like foaming mill wheels, whirled round everything that it seized and cast into the fathomless deep. For a long distance, the only road lay right across a quantity of warm, bubbling mire, called by the witch her turf moor. Beyond this stood her house, in the centre of a strange forest, in which all the trees and flowers were polypi, half animals and half plants. They looked like serpents, with 100 heads growing out of the ground. The branches were long, slimy arms, with fingers like flexible worms, moving limb after limb from the root to the top. All that could be reached in the sea they seized upon and held fast, so that it never escaped from their clutches. The little mermaid was so alarmed at what she saw that she stood still, and her heart beat with fear, and she was very nearly turning back, but she thought of the prince and of the human soul for which she longed, and her courage returned, and she fastened her long flowing hair round her head so that the polypi might not seize hold of it, and she held her hands close across her chest, and then she darted forward as a flash shoots through the water, between the supple arms and fingers of the ugly polypi which were stretched out on each side of her. She saw that each held in its grasp something it had seized upon with its numerous little arms, as if they were iron bands. The white skeletons of human beings who'd perished at sea and had sunk down into the deep waters. Skeletons of land animals, oars and rudders and chests of ships were lying tightly grasped by their clinging arms. She now came to a space of marshy ground in the wood, where there was a large, fat group of water snakes rolling in the mire and showing their ugly, drab-colored bodies. In the midst of this spot stood a house built with the bones of shipwrecked human beings, and there sat the sea witch, allowing a toad to eat from her mouth, just as people sometimes feed a canary with a piece of sugar. She called the ugly water snakes her little chickens, and allowed them to crawl all over her. "I know what you want," said the old sea witch. "It's very stupid of you, but you shall have your way, and it will bring you to sorrow, my pretty princess. You want to get rid of your fish's tail, and have 2 supports instead of it, like human beings on earth, so that the young prince will fall in love with you, and that you may have an immortal soul." And then the witch laughed so loud and disgustingly that the toad and the snakes fell to the ground and lay there wiggling about. "You are but just in time," said the witch, "for after sunrise tomorrow I should not be able to help you till the end of another year. I will prepare a drink for you, with which you must swim to land tomorrow before sunrise, and sit down on the shore and swallow it. Your tail will disappear and shrink up into what mankind calls legs, and you will feel great pain, as if a sword were passed through you, but all who see you will say that you are the prettiest little human being they ever saw. You will still have the same floating gracefulness of movement, and no dancer will ever tread so lightly, but at every step you take it will feel as if you were treading upon sharp knives, and that the blood must flow. If you will bear all this, I will help you." "Yes, I will," said the little princess in a trembling voice, as she thought of the prince and the immortal soul. "But think again," said the witch, "for when once your shape has become like a human being, you can no more be a mermaid. You will never return through the water to your sisters or to your father's palace again, and if you do not win the love of that prince, so that he is willing to forget his father and mother for your sake, and to love you with his whole heart, and allow the priest to join your hands, that you may be man and wife, then you will never have an immortal soul. The first morning after he marries another, your heart will break, and you will become foam on the crest of the waves." "I will do it," said the little mermaid, and she became pale as death. "But I must be paid also," said the witch, "and it is not a trifle that I ask. You have the sweetest voice of any who dwell here in the depths of the sea, and you believe that you will be able to charm the prince with it also. But this voice you must give to me. The best thing you possess will I have for the price of my potion. My own blood must be mixed with it, that it may be as sharp as a two-edged sword." "But you take away my voice," said the little mermaid. "What is left for me?" "Your beautiful form, your graceful walk, and your expressive eyes. Surely with these you can enchant a man's heart. But have you lost your courage? Put out your little tongue, that I may cut it off as my payment, and then you shall have the powerful potion." "It shall be," said the little mermaid. And then the witch placed her cauldron on the fire to prepare the magic potion. "Cleanliness is a good thing," said she, scouring the vessel with snakes, which she tied together in a large knot, and then she pricked herself in the finger and let the black blood drop into it. And the steam that rose formed itself into such horrible shapes that no one could look at them without fear. Every moment the witch threw something else into the vessel, and when it began to boil, the sound was like a weeping of a crocodile. When at last the magic potion was ready, it looked like the clearest of water. "And there it is for you," said the witch, and then she cut off the little mermaid's tongue so that she would never again speak or sing. "If the polypi should seize upon you as you return through the wood," said the witch, "throw over them a few drops of the potion, and their fingers will be torn into 1,000 pieces." But the little mermaid had no occasion to do this, for the polypi sprang back in terror when they caught sight of the glittering potion, which shone in her hand like a twinkling star. So she passed quickly through the wood and the marsh, and between the rushing whirlpools. She saw that in her father's palace the torches in the ballroom were extinguished, and all within were asleep. But she did not venture to go into them, for now, as she could not speak, and was going to leave them forever, she felt as if her heart would break. She stole into the garden, took a flower from the flower beds of each of her sisters, kissed her hand 1,000 times towards the palace goodbye, and then rose up through the dark blue waters. The sun had not yet risen when she came in sight of the prince's palace and approached the beautiful marble steps, but the moon shone clear and bright. And then the little mermaid drank the magic potion, and it seemed as if a two-edged sword went straight through her delicate body. She fell into a swoon and lay like one dead. When the sun rose again over the sea, she recovered and felt a sharp pain, but just before then she stood and looked, and there was the handsome prince. He flexed his coal-black eyes upon her so earnestly that she cast down her own, and then became aware that her fish's tail was gone, and that she had as pretty a pair of white legs and tiny feet as any maiden could have. But she had on no clothes, so she wrapped herself in her long, thick hair. The prince asked her who she was and where she came from, and she looked at him mildly and sorrowfully with her deep blue eyes. But she could not speak. Every step she took was as the witch had said it would be. She felt as if treading upon the points of needles or sharp knives, but she bore it willingly, and stepped as lightly by the prince's side as a soap bubble, so that he and all who saw her wondered at her graceful swaying movements. She was very soon arrayed in costly robes of silk and muslin, and was the most beautiful creature in the palace, but she could neither speak nor sing. Beautiful female slaves, dressed in silk and gold, stepped forward and sang before the prince and his royal parents. One sang better than all the others, and the prince clapped his hands and smiled at her. This was great sorrow to the little mermaid. She knew how much more sweetly she herself could sing once, and she thought, "Oh, if he could only know this! I have given away my voice forever to be with him." The slaves next performed some pretty fairy-like dances to the sound of beautiful music. And then the little mermaid raised her lovely white arms, stood on the tips of her toes, and glided over the floor and danced as no one yet had been able to dance. At each moment her beauty became more revealed, and her expressive eyes appealed more directly to the heart than the songs of the slaves. Every one was enchanted, especially the prince, who called her his little foundling, and she danced again quite readily to please him. Though each time her foot touched the floor, it seemed as if she trod on sharp knives. The prince said she should remain with him always, and she received permission to sleep at his door on a velvet cushion. He had a page's dress made for her, that she might accompany him on horseback, and they rode together through the sweet-scented woods, where the green boughs touched their shoulders, and the little birds sang among the fresh leaves. She climbed with the prince to the tops of high mountains, and although her tender feet bled so that even her steps were marked, she only laughed, and followed him till they could see the clouds beneath them, looking like a flock of birds travelling to distant lands. While at the prince's palace, and when all the household were asleep, she would go and sit on the broad marble steps, for it eased her burning feet to bathe them in the cold sea-water, and then she thought of all those below in the deep. Once, during the night, her sisters came up arm in arm, singing sorrowfully, as they floated on the water. She beckoned to them, and then they recognized her, and told her how they had grieved for her, and after that they came to that same place every night. And once she saw in the distance her old grandmother, who had not been to the surface of the sea for many years, and the old sea king, her father, with his crown on his head. They stretched out their hands towards her, but they did not venture so near the land as her sisters did. And as the days passed, she loved the prince more fondly, and he loved her as he would love a little child, but it never came into his head to make her his wife. Yet, unless he married her, she could not receive an immortal soul, and on the morning after his marriage with another, she would dissolve into the foam of the sea. End of part 3.